Hello, welcome to Mostly Sapphic Books, where I am on a mission to read every single book about lesbians. Today we're talking about Wife-Shaped Bodies by Laura Cranehill. This was on my list of most anticipated Sapphic books of 2026, and thank the Lord, it was actually good. Most of the books I've read so far on that list have been pretty good, but the last couple that I've read have been some real stinkers, and so it was great to have an actually good book on my list for once. This book is so good that I think it will reward rereading, which I haven't done. I've only read it once. I finished this yesterday, so a lot of this video is probably going to me thinking out loud as I sort of process a lot of the themes, or some of the themes. I think there's a lot to chew on here. This book is saying a lot, it's doing a lot. There's sort of like mysteries and things that are phrased interestingly, and things that I think you will only really pick up on multiple readings or like a really, really close reading where you're sort of analyzing the world and the way our main characters with their very limited perspective sort of see this world and don't understand it for what we would understand it as if we were in this world. In the most simple terms, this is a sci-fi novel about a mushroom lady who is in an arranged marriage with a human man. Reading this description, I thought this was going to be like a Stepford wife scenario. I knew it was about a girl who was in an arranged marriage, and then there was like a mushroom wife thing going on. And I thought it would be like once she gets married, she eats the mushrooms, and then that connects her to the hive mind of perfect wives who are all the same or something like that. That's not what this is. So these are like mushroom ladies. Like they're half mushroom, half human. You don't really understand that until later on in the book. A lot of this book, like a lot of the science and the actual world building, like you don't understand right away. You get fed little bits of information as you go along and you sort of piece it together. This video will have spoilers because I want to talk about the ending and all the things. It's not really about the plot. You're not trying to like get to the end like, oh, how does this end, or like what's gonna happen next. It's so action packed. It's really about like the journey and just like immersing yourself in the world and seeing like what this is and like discovering it as you sort of go along. And again, I think this will reward multiple rereadings, and so knowing the story won't impact your ability to enjoy this on a first read. I do think it's fun to sort of piece things together by yourself on a first read, so I guess if you don't want spoilers, don't watch this. But I think I definitely didn't pick up on every single thing, or I don't have a totally clear picture of every single thing that happened, like, in the past of this book. And so, like, again, I don't mind spoilers, but there are spoilers in this video. But our main character, Nicole, which is like a weird sci-fi name to have, but it makes sense. Nicole, she's half mushroom, half human. I don't think she really knows that at first. So because like she's mushroom, like she like sprouts growths every day. I thought again it was a thing where she would turn into a mushroom after the marriage, but no, she was born a mushroom. And the women who are unmarried, who are still children, unwed, whatever, they have mushroom growths all over their body. They let those grow out. And then when you get married, you have to shave them all off to appear pretty for your human husband. So she's able to identify people in the village as like, oh, that's a wife because she's shaved. Or that's not a wife because she has a bunch of fucking mushrooms growing all over her. But she actually doesn't know anyone in the village. Her mother keeps her confined to her house. Like, she's able to look out the window. She recognizes some people, but like she does not leave her house. She doesn't know anyone except her mother, her sister who moved away to get married a little while ago. I don't know exactly when. And then her, she never calls him a father. He might be like a stepfather. She never calls him that. Her mother's husband, who is like this abusive human man. Like all of the men in this book are framed as like very abusive patriarchal figures. Even by the women. But the women don't know any better. And again, like they're not human women. You don't understand that right away. You sort of think this is like a 20-year-old girl, like a young woman who's ready to get married. She's of marrying age. The first day in this book, it's her wedding day. It opens on her wedding day, and also her mother dying on her wedding day. But you assume like, oh, this is a young woman of marrying age, and then later in the book she says, I'm only 2 years old. And so like these are like weird, fast-growing mushroom creatures. And I don't know how long they live. Maybe forever, but like they grow really fast, like mature really fast. And her husband is 66, by the way. Um, Weird age gap. But she's never left her house until it's her wedding day. Well, really, she has to leave for her mom's funeral. Like, they're burying her mother right away. because her mother was infected with some like parasitic fungus that killed her, that the husband was in control of, and like the husband killed her. That's the implication. He purposefully gave her this toxic spore to kill her. God, there's a lot going on here. This is gonna be a long video where I'm just like talking about random aspects of the plot. I do want to talk about the themes because there's so much here. Again, you can already see from the setup, like the human men, all of the men in this world are humans and they're all old. Um, I guess I can get into like the lore of the world, which again, you don't really know until like later on in the book. You sort of piece it together piece by piece. But the men are scientists. I guess first I should say that the women, our main character isn't allowed to leave the house, but the other women are like stuck in this compound. That's what they call it, is this compound. But it's not like a building, like they have an outdoor area, but there's a wall like sealed around their area where like they're not supposed to go. But it's a pretty big area, it sounds like. But they're not allowed to go over the fence because there's radiation. Apparently, this was a post-nuclear apocalyptic kind of world, and this commune is like one of the last few places where life continues, or at least human life. And again, these men were scientists, so they were working on, I don't know, I guess this is like their compound. They were able to seal it effectively. They're very concerned about like animals getting over. So like if a rabbit hops over the fence somehow, like they kill it, because they know that those animals are contaminated by radiation. But they've sort of nullified a lot of the radiation because of these mushrooms. They were researching mushrooms before the nuclear apocalypse happened, I think. And they were able to like find a way to fuse human and mushrooms, or like use the mushrooms to make them immune to radiation or something. There's something about that with that. And some of them sort of want to leave the compound and like go help humanity or cure humanity with their weird mushroom cure that they're working on or that they developed somehow. Some of them just want to stay here. And again, all the scientists are men. Now, they all had families, they all had wives. I suppose they lived here. Again, like, this would reward rereading to, like, really understand the whole scope of, like, the backstory here. But their wives all not died? I'm not actually sure if the mushrooms, like, affected them differently or, like, what happened to the wives. So the wives are all sort of, they're kept in this like laboratory that, you know, the mushroom wives aren't supposed to access, but like the human wives that the human men had before the apocalypse, they're sort of like almost in cryostasis. There's like a lab where they're just like passed the fuck out. They might be dead. Some of them might be dead. Some of them are not dead. Some of them might be dead. It's kind of confusing because again, we're in this perspective of this 2-year-old mushroom lady who has no concept of the outside world, has not been told anything about like the backstory of the earth until she marries her husband, who is a scientist who is telling her these things. But those like dead cryostasis human wives were infected with mushrooms, and they sort of release spores that the men capture, and then they feed those spores to their mushroom wives, and then that impregnates the mushroom wives with a clone of whatever human woman they took the mushroom spores from. And we learned that all of these mushroom ladies in the town, all the mushroom wives, are clones of like the original wives, and they all just like keep having babies of each other, which is really interesting and weird. And our main character breaks into the laboratory and like recognizes like herself, like, oh, this was my clone, this was my mother, but it's not like her mother. It's the original, the forewoman. Is that what they called it? The foremothers, foremothers. And so these men are just creating weird docile mushroom wives for themselves, and giving each other wives again. They're impregnating their mushroom wives with more mushroom clones, to like replace each other again. The man that our main character Nicole gets married to, whose name I can't remember right now, Silas. He was married to other like mushroom clones of her that were his original wife. I think some of the others, like, you know, they get a new wife, you know, they pick and choose whatever face they want. But typically they have like the same wife, especially Silas. He was in love with his wife. And so he wants a clone of her and a clone of her, and like they sort of just replace each other. When one dies, you know, the other one's ready to go, already arranged to be married to a specific man. And so all of the men here are very controlling. Like, they are literally in control of these experiments. They don't see these mushroom ladies as totally human. They're sort of human-esque. They're sort of like dolls in a way. They're like humanoid things that they can sort of project their ideals onto. They can have sex with. Like someone in the house, someone to do things for them. But like they clearly don't respect that like as an equal human being. And again, most of them don't tell the mushroom women's like all the story of like the history of the earth. So like they don't know anything. Like they don't truly respect these mushroom ladies. Like these were sort of their weird wife servants. So clearly like 100 bajillion feminist themes going on there with that. A lot to unpack. How the men see themselves as the creators, even though it's the mushroom ladies giving birth to their wives. And also it's their wives who are giving birth to their mushroom wives. And it seems like some of these foremothers like were involved in the science. Or like I don't know, Silas like really loved his wife. And so she knew things just because he did respect her as a wife. Silas is interesting because he's sort of framed as a good husband. A lot of the other mushroom wives have like abusive husbands. They have bruises all over them. They give her advice on her wedding day of like, try not to get pregnant, don't make him mad. The wife's first year is always the hardest because, if she makes her husband mad, he's just gonna kill her. So they're like living in a network of abuse and like how they navigate that and like giving each other advice. And they're not really supposed to convene necessarily. They're not allowed to touch each other because if one gets infected with a weird mushroom, there's all kinds of weird mushrooms in this compound. If one gets infected and touches another, then the infection kind of spreads and then they all have to be killed or they're all gonna die anyway. And it's a whole thing. So they're not really supposed to be in contact with each other, but of course they do. Again, more feminist themes, but also mushroom themes. The way mushrooms talk to each other is like a big part of this. And that really connects to how women form these networks with each other of solidarity, even when they're not supposed to. Even when they've like been instructed not to. Again, like these are sort of creations. The scientists sort of think they can instruct these women to do whatever. But again, like they are their own beings and they sort of defy that programming, if you want to call it that. Um, Interesting. Like a lot going on. You could write a million essays. But a lot of the husbands are like comically evil, totally abusive. But Silas is framed to not be that straight away. Like he is a nice guy. He doesn't like physically hurt her. He sort of tells her more about the history of the earth than a lot of the other mushroom wives hear about. He doesn't touch her the first night they're together. He sort of frames himself in a lot of ways as this good guy, and he's sort of kind to her in a way that she's not expecting. Our main character has only known to be fearful of men. Even her stepfather was like very controlling. And so she expects him to like blow up at her, do whatever he wants, and just be evil. And when he's not doing those things in the most rash, violent way, like the book almost sort of frames it as if he's the nice guy, but the book is also very aware that like he is still part of the system. He is still creating mushroom wives. And there are moments when he does sort of lose his temper and yell at her, or like he grabs her arm to stop her from going somewhere, doing something. So we absolutely see those moments where like he's not a good guy. He's sort of a good guy compared to some of these other guys, but he's not a good guy. And the book shuts that down real quick. If anything, I almost sort of expected him to be like totally sort of good guy in the beginning, and then we slowly see him devolve into an evil creature. Um, to sort of bust that myth. Because again, it is dealing with the theme of like, is that good guy that good? Like he's still benefiting from this system of oppression. But the book doesn't linger on that too much. He starts behaving a little rash, like pretty soon on, like the grabbing her arm thing. So you immediately get inklings that he's not actually the good guy. We're not ever really supposed to think he's the good guy. Which I don't know if that's a missed opportunity or not. I guess the sort of the character who seems like the good guy, and then we as the audience sort of reconcile that he's not, has been done before. So I don't know that you're really losing anything there, and I mean you still kind of get the theme, just because of the way it's initially presented. I don't know, something there. But the lesbianism here, I guess I'll talk about the lesbianism. That seems relevant to the channel. She is sort of drawn to this other mushroom girl in town named Tegan, I'm gonna try real hard not to call the main character Sarah, because we don't hear her name a lot. It's Nicole. Every time it said Nicole, I was like, oh yeah, her name's Nicole. It's so weird. But again, like, I guess, is she named after the wives? Well, she's named by the scientists who have, like, human Earth names. And so it's not that weird for the mushroom to be named Nicole if that's who's naming her. But Silas's old wife is named Pamela, and sometimes he does call her Pamela, because she looks like Pamela and she wants to be Pamela. It's the whole thing. But her name's Nicole. But anyway, she ends up sort of entranced by this other wife named Tegan, who defies wifehood in a lot of ways. She lets her mushrooms grow out. Really, her husband is like sick and dying, so he doesn't have that much control over her, and so she's able to not shave her skin. She's able to sort of sneak out at night. She goes to like these secret meetings of other insolent wives who defy the system, and Nicole is sort of drawn to her brazenness and her, ability to break the mold and not care about it and seemingly not get caught or get punished for it. And then they kind of have a thing. There's a weird mushroom sex scene, which is pretty interesting because, again, they don't have fully human bodies. There's like some weird parts down there. So that was an interesting sex scene to read. Never read that before. Honestly, the romance here, not really my favorite part of the book. Almost, I don't want to say it feels forced. I don't know, it feels a little cliche that she falls for, sort of the rebel. I mean, it makes sense, like, thematically, that she would fall for someone who's sort of broken out of the system, because it's really about her journey of sort of understanding the system and defying it in a lot of ways. And so it makes sense that she falls for the rebel, but that feels kind of cliche. And her and Tegan don't really talk that much. They don't, like, bond. It's not like this big romantic thing. And it's sort of just the concept of, like, women looking out for each other. Anyway, it feels like an extra arm of that sort of feminist solidarity conversation. She is especially drawn to Tegan. They do have sex. She doesn't have sex with any of the other women. But it is sort of, it just feels reminiscent of the thing where, like, she's bonding with another woman and, like, they're touching each other, and touching is so forbidden, so, like, touching Tegan's like, whoa. If this had been a straight couple, I would have been like, yeah, of course she falls for the bad boy. A straight couple would not make sense in this context because the only men are evil old scientists. But, like, in another book, you know what I mean? Where, like, the main character falls for the bad boy rebel, because of course she does. I would feel like this was cliche. I'm more inclined to like it because it's lesbians, and I'm me. But I wasn't, like, in love with that relationship, to be honest. I don't think it was bad. I don't think it detracted from the book at all, but I don't really know how much extra it adds. I feel like you could have just had this be, like, a feminist friends, women, all together, yay, kind of thing. Which it is at the end. That is how this ends. The book ends with a lot of the wives sort of getting fed up, and, like, they burn down the laboratories, they burn down the homes, and presumably kill a bunch of the scientists. It's sort of glossed over in a way, where it's kind of told to you, and, like, it all happens really quickly. Maybe that could have been a little better, because our main character does, like, light buildings on fire and presumably kill people, and, like, even when they're running away, like, she kills them. And that's just sort of told to you. I guess maybe this book didn't want to linger on the violence, because it's not about that. It sort of makes the men feel insignificant in a way, like they just sort of die off screen over there, whatever, who cares, they're not important. Because I guess at that point in the novel they aren't important. The women, mushroom women, sort of understand that they are all connected mycologically, and, like, they're connected to the earth mycologically, and they do sort of, like, hive mind, blend together, and I don't know, connect with the roots of the earth, and it's like a whole thing. It's kind of, you know what I mean? It's not like an easy to envision thing. It's sort of metaphysical, ambiguous. That's not the word I'm looking for. Ethereal. It's a thing. Do you get it? And again, that's kind of the plot. Again, this book isn't super plot focused. Her mom dies. She moves in with this man. She sort of has an affair with Tegan. They sort of break into the laboratories. They find the foremothers. They sort of learn more about the world. And then they sort of burn the world down and create their own world, but also reconnect with the old world. There's definitely also a climate reading of this, because the scientists again think that they have sort of cracked the code of surviving this nuclear radiation with these mushroom things and like sort of manipulating the earth to their will. And they think that like their compound, like they've built this safe place. But the mushroom ladies were like, but the earth can sort of heal itself. Like the earth knows what it's doing. And so even in the face of tragedy, life is going to go on. Like the earth itself and like all of the systems and the plants and the mushrooms and the little bugs and like everything is going to find a way to survive because that's what the earth does. And humans caused this catastrophe and now they think they're going to cause the cure, but like the earth is self-sustainable and like you're just kind of in the way and being controlling even in your attempts to fix what you caused. There's something there again also very interesting. The themes are numerous in this. I did really like that framing. So this is not just a story about women rising up against their oppressors, it's about the earth rising up against its oppressors, which are the same people. So you could absolutely do a climate reading of this. I think this would be a good book club book because a lot of people will pick up on different things. Like someone will really focus on the feminism, someone will really focus on like the climate aspects. There's another like theme through line of this book, which is motherhood. Again, the mushroom ladies are all giving birth, and I don't know how long they live. Like they're giving birth pretty frequently, because again, she's 2 years old when she gets married, and then everyone says like, "Oh, your first year is really hard because your husband might kill you in the first year." So they're probably only living a few years before their husbands kill them, either for being insolent or also because they're worried that this humanoid creature could attain higher consciousness and like hurt them or harm them in some way. This is like a weird foreign thing they're kind of scared of. Like they have control over it, but like they're kind of scared of it at the same time. Um, so I don't think they live very long. Which another thing I didn't mention, the time frame of this. This feels like a super sci-fi book at the very beginning, where you're like, man, this is like a totally unrecognizable future, and our main character doesn't really understand like electronics or lights or anything like that because they don't have access to those. And those are sort of like ancient ideas. It feels like several generations have passed since the apocalypse, which it has been for her and her weird mushroom generations, which are only a couple years long. I remember there's a part where Silas is talking about an old like baby doll, like an animatronic doll. And he talks about how they still have batteries in them and like they still work. Sometimes they still make noises. And I'm like, if it's been generations, those batteries are not working. But it's only been mushroom generations. Like he is from an era where they had animatronic dolls. So it's been like a couple of decades. So like it does make sense that maybe some batteries are still working. And that's one of the things that um like the limited viewpoint of the character really alters how this story is told and like how you understand it and how you grow to understand it over time in a really interesting way that I think is really well done. And it's very organic. A lot of this isn't just told to you. There's a couple passages where Silas is telling about his old wife and like some of his old life before the apocalypse. But really like you're learning everything piece by piece, so it feels very organic and natural. It's not like some authorial hand, the voice of God speaking to you, telling you what happened to all these people. You have to piece it together yourself in a really interesting way. I really like the limited narration of this. Really interesting voice for the main character. I thought this was great from that perspective. But what I was talking about with motherhood, there's a lot of motherhood in this. And some in interesting ways that I don't know, I haven't really thought about. There's the mushroom mothers and the earth mothers giving birth to the mushroom mothers. But Silas's big trauma is that he and his wife tried to have kids several times and none of them survived, except for one. But he died as a baby. Like they had a son who died really young. And so he was never able to be a father. And that sort of haunts him. And then our main character does get pregnant in this. She gives birth to a son, the son he lost. He has sort of saved the spores of his dead son and was like feeding them to her so that she could have his son, even though that's not allowed and the other scientists wouldn't allow it. They're only supposed to have these daughters. But he was going to make her have their son and then run away with her. And like she would be Pamela, she would be his wife, and they'd have their kid again, and then they'd, go off and live a normal life. That's what he was trying to do. But she tries to have this kid and he doesn't survive. She births him and he's just like this little thing and he's dead. And she feels that loss of her son. And again, there is like some chemical situation to this, to the motherhood. I mean, it's like that in humans as well, where like once you have a child, like you are emotionally attached to that child. Even the mushroom women are. And so when she loses her son, it's like she's losing her son, and like she remembers him throughout the book. Even at the end, she sort of like buries him and goes to that spot and like sort of feeds the dirt, plants things and enriches the soil to sort of grow him. And I think there are like mushroom growths growing like out of his corpse still because he's a mushroom baby. And so she's still feeding him. She remembers him, and then Tegan has impregnated herself. Like she sort of built a baby inside of herself out of random things, like earth things. Like it's like a true mushroom baby. It has nothing to do with the old wives. It has nothing to do with her husband. Um, like I forget everything it's made out of. It's made out of like the river, the roots, the soil there. It's like an earth baby. I don't know what this baby is because the baby gets born. Again, the ending is sort of abstract. Abstract's a good word. Tegan like goes underground to connect with the earth mother. Um, and sort of like the baby comes out of it. I don't think it's a humanoid baby, but our main character sort of adopts it. Tegan's sort of dead and gone. Not really. I think she just like goes into the earth and becomes part of the earth. I think some of the other women do as well. But our main character, Nicole, sticks around after all the men are dead. They've sort of rebuilt their society or just crumbled their society. I guess there isn't one because you're just gonna connect with Earth. Is that a society? Is it a society? But she sort of raises Tegan's baby, which is Earth. I don't think it's humanoid, but she talks about how that baby does go over the wall and it goes to the ocean and sometimes it comes back. But as it's getting older, it's becoming more independent. She doesn't see it for a while, and it's longer gaps in time before it comes back to her. And she's sort of grieving as a mother as sort of this empty nester, as she realizes that her child doesn't need her as much. And eventually she ends up going over the wall with her child to the ocean, which is sort of like what Silas wanted to do. Silas wanted to escape and go back to the old Earth, the natural world. Not the natural world, maybe, but old Earth, his idea of old Earth. And she is going over the wall on her own terms and sort of seeing it for the natural Earth that it is, and not as like this historical relic with preconceived notions of what it is. She's sort of seeing all of the world for the first time with her child, Tegan's child, who she's adopted. I guess that's a lesbian stepmom. I don't know. And then eventually the child goes off on her own. But I think the child is Earth. I don't know. That part's kind of abstract. Again, you could reread this. And eventually Nicole realizes that, she's not the Earth, but she misses all of the other women in her village who have like gone underground to be mushrooms and like live together underground in this network of connected women finally. And so she goes to live with them at the end of the book, and I think Tegan is also there and she connects with Tegan. And so it is like a sisterhood, family, mushroom, feminism, lesbian, polycule. No, that's my reading of it. Although I don't think she has sex with any of the other. She doesn't have sex with the other women. They're just they're just in a commune, and also she happens to be in a lesbian relationship with one of the mushrooms. I don't know how you phrase this. It's a weird ending. But like it works thematically. It's hard to picture though. But that's because it's like conceptual and not like a physical thing where they're like physically crawling through the earth and they've dug tunnels to build a civilization under the earth. It's abstract. It's abstract. But anyway, the motherhood thing. There's so much motherhood. Of like this book opening with her losing her mother, and then it ends with her becoming a mother and sort of losing her child. There's something there. The loss of a child. Making your own child the way Tegan does. Who has control over birth and maternity? A lot to think about. The women gaining control of their own bodies in pregnancies. That's definitely a reading, for sure. And this is a recent book, so you could definitely read it post Roe v. Wade connotations. We are in the USA in this book, I think. I don't know if it says where we are. I believe we're in the USA. Yeah, because Silas talks about, he mentions US cities. So I believe we're in a compound in the USA technically, so you could definitely argue a post Roe v. Wade reading of this. Also, I think the title of this is interesting. Wife-shaped bodies. Not wife-shaped hyphenated. Wife-shaped bodies, which implies that the wife is shaping the bodies. At the beginning of the book, you'd think the title means wife-shaped with a hyphenated, meaning like these bodies are sort of wife shapes. They're really mushrooms, but they're shaped like wives. But wife-shaped bodies implies that the wives are doing the shaping, and like the women have taken control of their own agency. They are shaping the bodies. They are shaping their own pregnancies and themselves. And they're not shaving themselves for the men. Even that's like a direct connotation of like shaving hair for men. Women do that. That's a sort of surface level reading. Again, like there's a lot of like surface level stuff, and then you could dig deeper, like the mushrooms digging into the earth. Again, the way the women literally shape themselves for the men. At the beginning of the book, I guess you could argue it that way too. The women shape themselves into a certain form to meet the expectations of these men, and then at the end they're shaping different bodies. They're shaping their own bodies in a different way. You could read it that way too. It's an interesting title. Even the title has layers, you know what I mean? There's just so much here to talk about and think about. This is a book that'll leave you thinking about it. Again, you could reread this. I think it's really well done. I think it's really interesting. I think it's a unique story, even though like this sort of feminism, women rising up against their oppressor stories has been told before, especially in like dystopian novels like this. But I think this is an interesting viewpoint. I like the main character and how she's like totally alien, but also human, but also alien. Mushrooms aren't alien. I guess that's rude. I hope the mushrooms aren't listening. There's definitely a lot of mycological stuff here. I bet. I wonder if the mushroom people reading this, the mushroom people, like the IRL mushroom people, not like half human, half mushroom people, but like the people who are really interested in mushrooms. I wonder if they're reading this and like really appreciating the veracity of it. Like, is this well researched? I believe it is. It feels like it is. I don't know anything about mushrooms. They're yucky. I don't eat them. It's not my thing, but I know there's a lot of nature lesbians who know they're mushrooms. And this does mention like other names of mushrooms. There's a good detail where like our main characters like don't know the names of all these things because they were named by scientists, by men. So they just sort of understand these plants as they are. And they don't really necessarily even have names for them. And then the husband will be like, "Oh, you've got this specific breed of mushroom on your forehead," and name it. And she'll be like, "Don't call it that. That's weird. Why are you naming it like that?" And so like she understands them on like an innate level rather than like this classification scientific level. Um, which is also really interesting. Again, a lot of interesting things in this book. But the point is, it felt well researched. I think this author looked up a lot of stuff about mushrooms and like how they communicate, and the networks of them and how they grow and how they spread and intermingle. Because they're not made up of like one type of mushroom. Like they have various mushroom growths, sort of all commingling together, which is also thematic of like all of them commingling into the earth and like ecological systems. Really big ideas here, and I think they're well done, and well researched and like well represented. I think they translate well into like this feminist argument. I think a lot of the themes really work in tandem here in an impressive way. Again, good book club pick, because I think someone will have a new idea that or a different reading that no one else thought about that they focused on, and like you could really get into a discussion here. This is where I need like a podcast with a partner, and then we could just like talk about this book for 2 hours and spitball ideas back and forth and point out like little sections. And I don't know, maybe they understood something more about like the world building that I sort of missed because I wasn't reading close enough or like whatever, but instead we just get me thinking out loud. But good book club pick if you're into that, if you want to have a discussion with someone, if you want to make your friends read this with you. Anything else to talk about? there was one there is one scene I'll talk about. I guess it's not the climax. It's sort of a scene at the end that feels sort of important, where Silas feeds our mushroom lady, Nicole, mushrooms, like psychedelic mushrooms. Now, if you know me, if you've seen this channel before, I don't like substances in books ever, really. Especially when they're used to drive the plot, especially sort of like at these crucial end sort of moments. I think a lot of the time, usually it's alcohol, but substances are used to make the characters do something that they would not normally do, to drive the plot forward. But that completely undermines the plot because the whole point of the book is that you want your characters to be active and making decisions and in charge of their own destiny. And especially at the end, at a pivotal moment like this, you want your character to be making honest decisions that come from the heart, that come from their mind, that are sober and calculated and, decided upon. And maybe they are not the decisions they would have made at the beginning of the book, but that's the point and it shows growth. And when you introduce a substance and an altered state of mind, it just takes away agency from your character, which is not ever the point, like 90% of the time. So I complain about scenes like this in books frequently. And I don't know that I love this scene here, but I don't know that I hated it. I feel like I can rationalize it because this book is so good. I feel like I can make it make sense. So there's just a random scene towards the end, right before Silas is killed. He's not killed in the scene, but it's like the last big scene with Silas, I think, where he just feeds her mushrooms and she is sort of being drugged here. Like, she doesn't know that this is going to have psychedelic effects on her. She's 2 years old. But he feeds her mushrooms and then he goes on like the stupid man rant about how like mushrooms like open your third eye, man. You can see the world. The hallucinations are like your brain fixing itself, man. Back in our day, can you believe that they used to give people medication to stop them from hallucinating? Your brain's like supposed to see shit, man. It's like enlightenment, bro. And I'm like, oh, not this. Like all the controlling misogyny this man has done up to this point, and then I'm like, oh, never. This is the worst. This is the worst. This is insufferable. This type of guy's insufferable. I knew a guy like this, and it was sad. He would talk about this. It was sad. He would like draw on shrooms and he'd be like look at this painting, like I could just see the world so differently, look at this portrait I did, and then he would be like a drawing of his desk and it was just like a rectangle. I'm like, oh, that's really fucking sad. Yikes. Also, you're never gonna believe this, but a couple years later that guy died of a drug overdose, so that's sad. And he was in like Reddit communities of people who would like trip and talk about how amazing the trip is and how their fucking third eye is enlightened, and now he's dead. So that's not. I don't really like that. I don't like that type of guy. And I don't like they encourage each other to be that type of guy. And I don't like Silas for drugging our main character, essentially. So anyway, the function of the scene is it sort of sets up this conversation where Silas is talking about like the brain fixing itself, the way the body fixes itself, like a wound, the blood heals the wound and coagulates its, so how the body is designed to fix itself. And our main character Nicole is thinking like the earth is designed to do that too. That's where that conversation I was talking about, like with the earth healing itself and like knowing how to thrive and knowing how to persist through hardship, comes from this idea. He's talking about how he's gonna revive the world. And she's like, I think the world can revive itself. So she's sort of taking his concepts and being like, she's applying them differently. Like she's sort of listening but thinking differently. It's sort of interesting. And they try to, in their drugged stupor, like climb over the wall. I don't think they're successful. I don't remember. I was distracted thinking about how I hate drugs. But the drugs, I should call them shrooms because they're shrooms specifically, which I think is relevant to this mushroom book. Um, she has a lot of the symptoms he talks about, like seeing God. Like you could take drugs and you could see God, man. Or it's like you'll understand a language you didn't even know you didn't know, which is like fucking meaningless on a human level. But she is a mushroom, and so when she takes mushrooms, it almost is like she's connecting with the mushroom that she's ingesting, and she sort of does see God in that she starts to understand like her role as an organism on this planet full of life and how she's just like one part of this ecosystem and how they are all connected and how like she does understand these languages that she doesn't know she forgot, because like she's sort of tapped into the mushroom world, this whole vast system of interconnected uh mycological organisms underground and like all around her, and like she's aware of like all of the different mushrooms that exist in like this forest and this compound. And so like she kind of does seek God and like have this enlightened revelation that leads to this revolution of the mushroom ladies killing everyone. But I think it works in this because she's a mushroom eating mushrooms. I think I can rationalize this, and it's not just like some guy did drugs and then saved the world or like changed the world because he was on drugs and he's enlightened about the revolution, man. It's like she really did tap into the mushrooms. So I think this drug scene works better than it would in any other novel ever. Sorry, my camera battery died, so the rest of this video is filming on my phone. Also, if I lost the 45-minute file from my camera, I'm gonna be mad, and I'm not filming this again. Silas has a baby all with batteries that last like 30 years, and my camera can't record for 2 hours. Okay. But anyway, I'm basically done. I think I've said most of what I wanted to say, which is why it's very rude that my camera shut down. I guess I'm just filming the outro now. I thought this was a good book. I think this is ripe for discussion. I think you should read it with friends. I think you were probably looking for other people talking about it because it's a book that encourages discussion. It's a book that you can read a lot out of. It's a book that you could reread multiple times, focusing on different conversations it's having. I think it's very well done. I think it's very voicey. I think it's good horror or sci-fi. I don't necessarily call it horrific. I think this is classified as a literary horror. I guess I could see that. It's not like the most grotesque thing I've ever read, but I guess there are moments of horror, you could say. But I want to call it sort of dystopian horror sci-fi, something like that. And it is literary. Again, the prose is pretty beautiful. I didn't say anything about that actually, so I shouldn't say it again. But the prose is quite nice. There are some really beautiful descriptions. For all of what I said about the ending being completely unimaginable, in terms of like literally producing an image, a lot of the things in this book are described very well. Things about the growths and like the compound and like the houses, and I thought the writing was really well done. This is also a debut novel, which is pretty impressive. I would like to read more from this author, provided it has lesbians. Although I guess it doesn't necessarily need to have lesbians. But I prefer lesbians. Even though like the lesbians were like the weakest part of this book for me. So maybe it doesn't need to have lesbians, but I do like lesbians. That'll bump it up on the priority list, but I would be interested in seeing what this author does in the future. Very promising, very good debut, and a very good addition to my most anticipated books of the year list. We got a good one. We did good. I absolutely recommend this. 5 stars. Great book. Enjoyed it very much. Have a good night.